One of my private T1D clients almost died last week, and she gave me permission to share this story in hopes that it would help you to avoid similar circumstances. A lot of you have been asking questions about what is the 80-20 blood sugar formula? How is this revolutionary new diabetes protocol saving lives, helping people to live their best lives? Today's example is going to give you a very specific example about how it does just that. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Van de Vecht. I am a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist. I live with type 1 diabetes as well. And I'm actually going to bring an example from this book that I'm not showing just yet, but this book on page 91 has the answers to what our client used to save her own life. Now, in this story, there are going to be some examples that might scare some of you, might bring up some maybe anxiety, fears of lows. There is some pretty extreme circumstances that we encounter, but the reality is that that is life with type 1 diabetes. So if you can't handle that, this is your warning to turn back now. Go find a different episode that might be more helpful, less scary, but I promise you that if you stick around till the end, you will have not only hope, but also a structured plan to avoid these circumstances yourself. Now, with that being said, my client did give me permission to share her story, and it's a powerful one that I had to pause multiple times while reading through and just go, wow, I'm so glad you made it through. Now, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because I do want to make sure we get to the core of today's lesson and actually get you some actionable takeaways. So without any further ado, I am going to read through her submission. This was a question submission for our coaching calls. So when I do coaching calls with my clients, we run through Q&A, and it's very specific to each person, but other people can listen in and see what they can pick up and learn from. But she started by saying, it's more of a story than a question. I made a huge mistake. And these are all her words, by the way. I made a huge mistake. I could have put myself in the hospital, but I made a plan, executed it, and came to a good conclusion. On Sunday evening, my dinner was high fiber, a decent amount of protein that was plant-based and moderate fat. I didn't think I would see a quick rise, so I gave minimal pre-bolus. Now I'm going to pause here, and I want you guys to think about how she approaches this. Very calculated, very methodical. This is our precise approach. This is what most of my clients love about the 80-20 blood sugar formula, is that it is precise. It is exact. It's not eat some carbs, it's eat 7 carbs, right? It's not go walk for a little while, it's walk for 27 minutes, right? And those obviously are made up examples for this, very generic, speaking to you, the public, right? But understand how she thinks through this is critical. If you can think like this, if you can think differently, you will accomplish much greater things. So, with that being said, I'm going to continue. On Sunday evening, my dinner was high fiber, a decent amount of protein, plant-based, and moderate fat. I didn't think I would see a quick rise, so I gave minimal pre-bolus. Starting blood sugar was at 110. I was wrong. Blood sugar jumped to 236 in less than 30 minutes. I was annoyed and figured more to come with the proteins and fats. I took what I thought would cover them, and then my jaw dropped. I was careless. I had over 5.5 units of insulin on board. Pause. This is different for everyone. For this client, that was a lot of insulin. For some of you, I know that's pretty standard, or maybe even not that much, right? But in the context of this story, understand if you looked at how much insulin you had taken and you were shocked by that amount, that's what this individual was feeling. This was significantly more insulin than they're typically used to giving, right? I had over 5.5 units of insulin on board. My first of 2 times during this experience, hearing Matt's voice in my head. He says, once you take insulin, you can't take it back. I immediately shut off my insulin pump. Then Matt's voice again in my head, use your formulas, make a plan. I told myself not to panic. I had time. Looking only at blood sugar and insulin, I disregarded the food for the worst case scenario. My formulas are as follows. Correction is 1 to 75. So if I consider the fraction of a unit to cover my basal needs with the insulin pump now off, I was looking at a 375 point potential drop in blood sugars. I figured my 236 blood sugar can use up 1 of the 5 units I needed to address. So my next formula, 1 glucose tab, which would raise me 20 points. So conservatively, 4 tabs per unit, I needed 16 glucose tabs. pause. This is what we refer to as our GTR, or your glucose tolerance ratio. There's a lot of stuff in this that are more unique to our program, right? So you're not going to know half the terms she's talking about, but these are calculations, right? So she understands how many points her blood sugars will rise per gram of glucose. So since the glucose tab is 4 units, she's a 1-to-5 ratio, which means for every glucose tab she consumes, she should see her blood sugars go up by 20 milligrams per deciliter. So this is what I talk about when I say level of precision, specificity behind blood sugar formulas. It's not that you have to be a math whiz, right? But math unlocks certainty with blood sugars. That's the beauty of it. And so we walk through a lot of that. So she's talking about one glucose tab raises to 20 points. So she needs, what was it, 16? Yeah, 16 tabs in total to offset the total units that she had given, right? And as she said, I had in the back of my head that I couldn't digest 16 tabs effectively if I ate them all at once. So these are all different lessons she's learned and picked up through the process. I also knew I couldn't catch this if I waited too long, which is true. If you got 5 units on board that you didn't eat for and it just starts crashing, you're going to drop insanely fast, which you'll see in just a second. She said, quick check of my blood sugar. It was 234. Deep breath. My plan? 4 tabs every 15 minutes. I gathered my 16 tabs. I then ate my first 4. 15 minutes later, my blood sugar was 199. And keep in mind, she's already dropped like 40 points, right? That's insane. I ate a second 4 tabs. 10 minutes later, I heard the rapid drop alarm. 141. Double arrows down. See, I'm getting chills just reading this. You understand that she is rapidly dropping. This is an emergency situation. You might think 141, that's not that bad, right? But active insulin on board acting rapidly. In the last 25 minutes, she's dropped 100 points. That's a lot, right? And it's picking up speed. I think that's the extra piece of context that's helpful to understand. She says, I hope the fat wasn't going to make this more difficult than I knew it could be. Bonus lesson here. Fat slows down the digestion of carbs, which is helpful in a meal if you want to avoid a spike, but detrimental if you've had fat recently and you're trying to treat a low or a dropping blood sugar, because the fat will slow down your low treatments, even glucose tabs. So if you've had a high fat meal recently, be extra wary of lows, because the low treatment is going to be slower to digest, which means you might drop a lot further than you expected to see, and you might get stuck in a low for much longer. I've seen clients get stuck in lows for 45 minutes, an hour, sometimes 2 hours, because they had a 6-egg omelet before treating a low, right? It's very critical to understand how these different variables are going to impact your blood sugars. So to go back, double arrows down, 141. I hope the fat wasn't going to make this more difficult than I knew it could be. I decided to take the third group of 4 glucose tabs. Blood sugar goes to 121, then 106, and arrows are only slanted down. I was breathing easier. At 80 with a flat arrow, I took 2 of the last 4 expected that I needed. Over the next 15 minutes, small drops in blood sugar, so I took the last 2. I had more glucose on hand in case I was wrong. Blood sugar went down to 68, then started a slow climb. Now I'm thinking I was out of the woods, wondering if it will skyrocket, but since I spread out the glucose tabs, I expected only the last 2 or 4 to be something I needed to consider. With that in mind, I expected my blood sugar to land somewhere in the range of 90 to 150. When I hit 111, I breathed a sigh of relief. Thankful to Matt and the Renegade Warrior tribe. Turned on Control IQ and sleep mode and got ready for bed. Woke up with a 136 and a flat line all night. That is the power of blood sugar formulas. That is why we do what we do. That's why we learn the new protocol for diabetes management, because there are circumstances that you can avoid danger now. It's not a given that you will experience low blood sugars. Now, technically, she hit 68, right? So that is technically a low. But after crashing that hard to then level out at 68 and cruise in at 111, are you kidding me? And to not have a rebound high from that is insanity, right? So first, I want to express that I am beyond proud of this individual for doing this, especially doing so without panicking. And we talked about this on our coaching call, but when you panic, you lose logic. Like you're unable to think through things clearly because panic overrides in your brain, right? So if you panic, it's a lot harder to think through logical facts, next steps, and how to build an action plan, right? But she did something that was absolutely incredible, which was she ran her calculations and projected timelines. Now, the book that I wanted to share with you is, in fact, The Blood Sugar Freedom Formula. She credits this book with a lot of the lessons learned, and obviously working with me helps us to take those lessons a bit further and fine-tune them for her. But if you go to page 91, it's going to discuss balancing and manipulating blood sugars, and that's exactly what she did. In fact, let me pull it up. If we go to page 91, it's going to give you a whole bunch of different graphs. It's going to give you a bunch of different images, but here you go. Balancing and manipulating blood sugars. All right. Now this graph here is the graph that she was using, right? So on this page, we talk about what the arrows mean. And so it's not just that she was double arrows down. In fact, Dexcom doesn't go this far, but she was probably triple arrows down. If there was one for Dexcom CGMs, she was dropping at like 40 to 50 points every 5 to 10 minutes. That is insane. So understanding her thought process behind this was she projected what is a worst case scenario based on the insulin on board that I have. She had 5.5 units. Based on her correction factor, she reverse engineered the potential drop. Right, so she was like, okay, I turned off my pump, so assuming I don't take any of my basal insulin for the next hour, I can get out this much of the 5.5 units, kind of reverse that. But the rest of the insulin, it's in there, I can't take it back, right? That's one of the lessons she learned from us. And beyond that, calculated the potential threat at hand, the projected timeline of that insulin. So 5.5 units for her at a 1 to 75 correction factor means that she was projected to drop, I think she said 375 points. At 236, that's too much, right? That means you're going negative, which means you die. And so she had to then calculate how much sugar she needed to offset the potential drop. And then she decided to take extra care to avoid a rebound high, which would be, of course, to spread out the glucose tabs. Now, the second option to this would be to eat that same amount of carbs in a different type of carb, right? So technically, she could have had complex carbs that are slower digesting and just eaten all of them the second that she took too much insulin, right? The issue with that, though, is that with it being slower digesting, had she dropped faster than that food digested, it didn't do anything to help, right? And she would still be in a dangerous situation. So she chose the right thing. I told her literally step by step, that is exactly how I would have treated that if I took a dangerous amount of insulin on accident. Absolutely would have calculated worst case scenario. Then I would have followed that with how do I offset that threat? How do I balance things out, right? That chapter, page 91, is called Balancing and Manipulating Blood Sugars for a reason. Like, we teach you the simple math behind how to do that. And if you don't have the book yet, by the way, that's going to give you a lot of answers. We're just scratching the surface here. That's going to have a lot deeper discussion, obviously, and all the visuals are very helpful as well. But that was her process. Calculate worst case scenario. How do I balance this? And then how do I manipulate the outcomes, right? So she manipulated it by choosing very specific type of carbs, spacing them out appropriately so that digestion could continue at a relatively normal rate. And she avoided a post-meal spike by constantly reassessing the situation. And she pulled herself out of that dangerous, potentially life-threatening situation without a scratch. Beautifully executed. Right? And that is what I want you to start thinking of. Not that there is, some general cookie cutter diabetes plan, because those do not exist. Or they do, but they don't work, right? It works for anyone who wants to be quote unquote good enough. But to me, that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It sickens me to think that people are being told, oh, you're good enough. Stop trying so hard by their medical teams. Or that they only care to be good enough. Like, if you only care to be good enough, you're only going to get good enough outcomes. Okay? Complications? Well, you're only good enough, so you might encounter a few of those, right? Roller coaster blood sugar days? Well, that's what good enough feels like, right? Restriction with your diet, saying no to fun family events, that's good enough. What we strive for is the best it can possibly get. And the path to get there, blood sugar formulas, hands down, the best thing I could ever recommend is to get your blood sugar formula dialed in. Why? Because it's personalized. It's yours. It's not just some generic blanket statement that diabetics should eat low carb, right? Is low carb an option? Yes. And if you like it, great. I support you in that. Let's get the right formula though, so you don't see spikes and drops that are unnecessary. But also understand you can have carbs. You cannot have carbs. You can have some, you can have a lot, you can have little. It doesn't matter if you have the right blood sugar formula set up. Now, I'm going to leave you with this. This is going to be a thought-provoking little statement for you. I need you to remove the word some from your language surrounding diabetes management. What do I mean by that? I mean that a lot of times medical teams will share with you their advice, which is to have some food before you go out for an activity, because that'll help keep you stable. Have some protein, have some carbs, right? What good is that? Some means something very different to a lot of different people, right? For me, I'm an Ironman athlete, so some food is a mountain. I'm like, oh, it's only one plate full of food, right? I'm like, I eat 3 plates of food sometimes. So for me, some looks very different than somebody who's on a weight loss journey. And to them, some might be like a bite or 2. I'm like, that's not going to cut it for me, right? So remove the word some. It's too general. It's not going to help you. It's a starting point, right? But that's for diagnosis day. You get maybe a couple of weeks to build a couple of baseline strategies. And then beyond that, you should start looking at how your body responds to the different blood sugar variables. Okay, so remove the word some, the generic cookie cutter crap that's not serving you well. In fact, it's probably making it more frustrating because you're trying your best. It's just not working, right? It's because you're using generic strategies. Remove the word some and add more specificity. How many carbs do I need to get me out of a low? Is it the standard 15 grams of carbs and then retest in 15 minutes? Sometimes, but not always, right? Depends on the context, which is another one. Actually, I think it's in chapter 7 of this book, the Blood Sugar Freedom Formula, that we go into more of the context behind our decisions, right? Understanding that if I am 68 and steady and I've already consumed 12 glucose tabs, maybe I don't need more, right? And so there's a really important distinction to be drawn there. She calculated she needed 16. She didn't eat all 16 at once, but 16 glucose tabs, 16 times 4, quick math, 32, 64, that's 64 grams of carbs. So not 15, right? Very different. Or if you have no insulin on board, you've been sitting on the couch for 5 hours and you hit 69, you're like, okay, technically I'm low. Do I need 15 grams of glucose? Probably not, okay? You might only need 1 glucose tab to get you into the 80s or 90s and then you're good again, right? Context is critical, but you won't know that unless you introduce specifics into your blood sugar management. Get specific. How many carbs do I need? What is the decimal point of insulin that I need? 1.33. Great. That's a lot better than 1-ish, right? Or some insulin. Stop it with the generic strategies. Learn from this client of mine. Because she was specific, she was able to reverse engineer every single step of this and have an exact plan that not only saved her from a hospital trip and potentially from entering into a life-threatening situation, but also allowed her to exit that beautifully at 111. No rebound spike, no stubborn low. She nailed it. And that's what I want for you. Remove some, add specificity into your blood sugar formulas. I promise you, you start paying attention and looking for specificity, looking for patterns in your management, you will find it. And when you have the specifics dialed in, blood sugars finally make sense. They're finally predictable. And that's what I want for you. Because when blood sugars are predictable, not only do you get to do more of what you want, like have fun food, go on hikes, adventures, but you get to do it with peace of mind. And for me, that's all I ever wanted. Diabetes just felt like a giant question mark for a really long time for me, and it wrecked my mental health. The uncertainty behind my blood sugars and of the strategies that were told to me by my medical team of having some food or some insulin, or you're going to experience some complications, all that crap. That's what drove me mad. But when I found specificity, and I want to keep repeating that word so it really gets into your head, I want you to remember this, the specifics are what unlocked true predictability and control that have allowed me to finally experience freedom. That's where the blood sugar freedom formula comes into play, right? And you probably saw on the top of the book, actually, it says think differently, right? Now you get it. Now you understand. Now, I told you as well the 80-20 blood sugar formula. I would hopefully demystify some of that. That is largely how these formulas work, right? They are simple calculations that when combined unlock a whole new level of control, predictable, consistent control while living your best life. So I hope that helps to some degree. If you're new here, I hope that didn't scare you away. Diabetes gets pretty intense, and so do some of these videos, but I share them out of love because I've been in a place where I hit rock bottom and then I fell deeper. I didn't know you could fall under rock bottom. You have to crawl out of the rocks at the bottom of the pit because of my diabetes. And I want you to know that there is hope to be found. So again, hope this was helpful. Hope you enjoyed this one. And let's all give a round of applause for my client. And I won't mention her name. She's actually in our program testimonial videos. You'll find her as well if you want to go look and hear more from her full story. But for now, proud of her for implementing, for staying cool under pressure, and for using what she learned. So kudos to you. And for all of you watching, honestly, I'm proud of you too, for being here, for learning, for trying to figure out your diabetes. This is a beast of a disease. It's a tough one. There are insane amounts of things that impact blood sugars, over 50 variables actually that can impact blood sugars. And this book covers a lot of them, but even still, not all of them, right? There are some that have to be more personalized. So I'll leave you with that. Less of the sum crap that we've been taught is the way for diabetes, the good enough messaging, right? More specifics, more formulas, more freedom. If you haven't yet, would love to hear from you. Drop a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Stay strong, look for those patterns, find your formulas, and keep up the fight. Bonus lesson, because you made it to the end of this video, I did want to touch on the 80-20 blood sugar formula one more time. Today we talked about avoiding a low. That is simply one aspect of blood sugar formulas. See, if you understand how blood sugars work, you can manipulate them surrounding any life event. So a lot of my clients use blood sugar formulas, specifically the 80-20, for activity, right? To keep blood sugar stable so you don't have to start high and work your way down with an activity, or so you don't crash low and have to bring it back up during an activity. Whether that's a walk, a hike, a workout, or even just playing with your kids or grandkids. This also applies to specific meal types, understanding how to dose for pizza and stay in range, or a burger or pasta or whatever's on the menu that night. That's the point. So blood sugar formulas, specifically the ones that we set up with our clients, like the 80-20 blood sugar formula, unlock predictability, which allows freedom. See how that works? If you have certainty behind your blood sugars, you can plan for whatever you want, right? Because it's just simple math. It's an equation that allows us to do what we want while being healthy with our blood sugars. And the last note, this is more of a bonus for you guys because you made it to the end. With the blood sugar freedom formula, the book that we referenced in this episode, we're actually doing a live read-along event. If you'd like to join us, if you think it would be helpful to go through this book with the author himself, me, and answer questions of yours that might come up while you're reading it. We're also going to go into deeper discussions, some of the examples that didn't quite make it into the book because just ran out of space, and also some new concepts that we're not even going to talk about on here just yet because those are for those who are in the book event with me. So if you'd like to join the book read-along event, you are more than welcome to join. It is included in your book purchase. And if you're watching this a year later and it's already over, we are saving the replays for anyone who purchases the book ever. And this is to celebrate it hitting #1 bestseller. So If you'd like to join us for that, it's completely free. It's included in your book purchase. So when you do that, we'll put a link in the description for you that you can use to join the rest of us for that free book read-along event. So thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. And as always, keep up the fight.